our ancestors built with their lives.
Good evening, afternoon. Good afternoon on the West Coast. Good afternoon, good evening in the Central. Good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the reparationist perspective. Yes, family, bringing you those ADOCS hot topics and making the case for reparations, making the case for weaponizing our vote and socializing our suffering. And today, family, do Jesus. You got Nigerians who traded us into slavery, running around here wanting to run on the Republican ticket out of the Michigan, wanting to take away Black History Month. You've got the HBCU'S and some information I need to share with you about the horrors, how the government turned the troops on the Black students when the HBCU'S were getting into formation because they demanded Black administrators and Black teachers. I'm also going to be sharing with you about the huge national disparity that you see in incomes that I've listed here. It was at the opening, the top of the show, and now it shares the screen with me. We're going to talk about the egregious income ratio wealth gap in this income ratio gap, and we're going to parallel that to the shrinking numbers of Black teachers as a result. And then I'm going to share about Malcolm X. Today is the anniversary of the 56th year since he was executed for fighting for ADOCS and the right to be American. So he is going to be our freedmen's hero. And what I've decided is going to be Freedman History Year. In my world, it's always on some other, I don't believe in just a month. I believe in all of the history and in the miseducation of ADOCS in America with 3 Ks, that it's just too rich to just give us 29 days. I've decided every time I go live, I'm going to feature another ADOCS, another Freedman, okay, hero or shero, so that we can be in constant reminder about what animates this movement for reparations, what animates us, how we are still here. The strength of the ancestors is why we are still here. And we need to be constantly reminded of why we've got to put ADOCS first, second, and third, akin to how the other groups look out for themselves. I want you to have the confidence to fight for reparations exclusively for ADOCS. So this is why I do this show, to just constantly remind you with the things I'm sharing, the things that impact me in the seat of my soul, the things that get me moving. I share these things with you, not to piss you off necessarily, but hey, sometimes being angry gets ish done. So this is the way I stay motivated, is to keep my mind stayed on my people and stayed on the reparations we are long overdue. And I'm putting together a show to show you how the ADOCS reparationist movement has actually moved the needle on this, and how I believe in the seat of my soul, we're closer than we are, the 400 years distance from it that I felt prior to getting involved in the reparationist movement, okay? So this is why I do this show. I'm on my square. I posted earlier today that I am no longer willing to accept the things I cannot change. I am here to change the things I refuse to accept. And so I am here to open up the minds, the eyes, the hearts of everyone who will partake and get in this fight with us, akin to the abolitionists from all walks of life that got involved with us for our emancipation and civil rights. So I'm on my square. So let's get into it. I want to say hello to my extraordinary co-host. You know, guys, I'm sorry I had to change the time. That's probably why so few of you are over here, but the show must go on. I've been called into a meeting about things that we're doing here in California at 6 p.m. And y'all know, as eager as I am to get you out in a timely manner, it rarely ever happens. So I just give myself 2 hours and said, okay, I can at least be at my meeting on time if I move it back an hour. They're not working the movement around me. Having to work my show around the movement because I don't just do the show. I am a staunch, strong advocate for state repair. And now I'm looking forward to working with you guys who've expressed an interest in continuing this work for the national reparations. And of course, the show is to win more people to this argument and to give some insight and education to my comrades so they can understand why they too continue this fight, to give them the fortitude to keep going on. So with that being said, let me say hello to my illustrious co-host, Rolando Moore, Brian Johnson, Nicole Williams Chrisman, and Trey X ADOS. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. And for those of you who have yet to type in the chat, watching from YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, I thank you so much for joining me here on the live. So let's get into it. My first story is going to go to, oh God, let me breathe through it. I'm going to deal with this Nigerian in Michigan who literally wants to shut down our Black History Month. And we're going to talk about it. I'm going to show him in the tweet, and then I'm going to read the article. I hate the pop-ups and the ads. So let me get to his photo, and then we can talk about it. Okay, I hope you guys can see that. Let me make it bigger. So I'm going to jump. You won't see me, but as usual, you're my co-host. You can type how you feel about it, what you think about it, any type of comments to help add and frame the discussion. I'm happy to hear from you always, and we'll be reading your comments towards the end of the show before I play us out with a video about Malcolm X. Okay, so here we go. And of course, I'll be commenting in between, telling you the way I see it. Michigan candidate for governor is a Black man. He's Nigerian, who wants to cancel Black History Month. Michigan's deeply conservative 2022 gubernatorial hopeful Austin CHENGE, a Black Army veteran and businessman and Governor Gretchen Whitmer's first Republican challenger, announced that if elected, he will abolish Black History Month in favor of an American History Month. Yeah, no. I'm going to finish reading it. It's short. I will cancel Black History Month in Michigan, CHENGE announced in an Instagram post. It's offensive, unfair, maybe illegal. Americans from all backgrounds deserve a revered history. I'll declare American History Month. Let me time out. This country has miseducated us on our history from the word go. In the video I'm going to share with you later, where they annihilated 2 students who were fighting on Southern's campus in order to get more Black administrators and teachers. The reason why they were fighting is because our HBCU'S were and are controlled by white dollars. So when our people, when our beautiful ADOCS would stand up and fight for the right to have Black teachers and Black administrators, they turned over the federal troops. This is yet another demand of mine in the reparations argument. I want the calculation of the terror that they rained on the HBCU students for demanding that their administration and their teachers be from them, because what would white folks do to control the narrative and to control how far we succeeded, how far we excelled? What they would do was put white folks in control of our education, akin to what's happening today. And it's why we are losing. That's a whole nother segment that I'm going to roll up into. But right now, this Mickey Ficky from Nigeria. Now, they didn't say he was an Army veteran in the U.S. military. He more than likely descends from slave traders, as I've shared with you guys in prior shows. Let me share my face on here because sometimes folks think I done disappeared. Uh-oh, hold on. Okay. Hi, Moni Love. I see you, baby. Miss Lady K Love, I see you. Okay, back to the article, and I'll come over and give the rest of you some love, okay? This country, this is why I started the Miseducation of ADOCS in America with 3K's book club series. Because the history, we've been lied to about our history. They focus more on Anne Frank than they do Emmett Till. Than they do the only hero they will focus on is the very whitewashed version of Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks. They won't talk about the Martin Luther King Jr. that they executed prior to the Poor People's March, where he was addressing reparations. I played at the top of the show when he said, when we come to Washington, we're coming for the check, right? They don't talk about the radical Malcolm, the radical Martin. They'll only talk about safe. When they've been able to whitewash the history, that's what this country does. They don't teach about slavery from a place of the ones who revolted, the ones who helped us to escape to freedom. We get 1 month by government standards. It's going to be every show from me henceforth. Freedmen's History Year ongoing. I'm going to be highlighting us because our history is not being taught. And yet, okay, they claim he served in the military. They didn't say the U.S. military. And I've shared with you guys in the past about how Nigerians owned us. Not only owned us in the country, but they traded us into slavery. They traded us to white folks, okay, from Europe. They traded us for things like fabric, alcohol, trinkets. And a lot of us, I can't get the numbers right yet, but many of us descend from the greatest of the great minds over there that may have lost in war. And this is when the winner, the victor, would sell the elite of us. They would sell us into slavery. Not everybody was poor and serving off a debt during slavery over there. Not everybody was that. Not everybody that was captured and sold descend from the bottom caste over in Africa. So here you've got this Chenge running on the Republican ticket, pandering for the white vote to let them know all history matters. This is what is problematic, family. When you don't put a gate up for ADOCS, when you are too ashamed or too afraid to say it loud, I'm ADOCS proud. They are able to weaponize immigration against you, put them in every level of government to help them continue to oppress you and wipe away your people and wipe away your history. I've shared with you, our numbers aren't growing due to abortion and government sanctioned execution. Now the COVID, black on black murders, all of it by design of institutional systemic racism. And folks want to call you xenophobe for standing up for ADOCS exclusively. while these type of mofos never get that work served on them. You understand? They're able to just come in and assume whiteness, because whiteness is not a matter of your skin tone. Your money makes you white in this country. So more than likely, he may have served in the military over in Africa. More than likely, he descends from from African slave traders, like I shared with you in a prior archive about this woman talking about her great-grandfather, her grandfather or great-grandfather, I can't recall, it's in the New York Times, was a slave trader. She was proud of that. So this is why we've got to push back. This is why we've got to get politically engaged on every level. We can't just be fighting the national stuff. We must get involved in our local politics. We must do it. And so the NAASD is where you can actually come together and coalesce together. You can come in with me as Equity Advocates PAC. I just sent off my email. I will share the link momentarily, how you can get involved with the newly established NAASD, formerly the ADOCS movement. And the beauty of them is that you can stay autonomous and come in under your own grassroots and continue to get your work done. Or you could decide to form a chapter with the NAASD acronym to precede it. That stands for National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants. So this is the beauty of what's going on. You see, our hands were tied for 2 years, okay, but no more. We are free. And what is happening in that space is that they're teaching you how to fight on every level of government. You can get involved with different committees of your interest to get engaged in this fight. So yes, please, 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 I'm going to share that link. But in the meantime, you guys can also email me your interest at friendsofadostv@gmail.com. And what I'm going to do is arrange a meeting so we can have a meeting of the minds, and you guys can get more information on how you can work with them exclusively as an independent, as your own grassroots, or with me in the Equity Advocates PAC. Because as you know, these Africans here, you may not know, they've got PACs in this country. And this is why they can afford to move like they're moving and take over government. Until we have a PAC exclusively for ADOCS, which is Equity Advocates PAC, we're going to always be in this position to have our rights taken away from us and have our history wiped from us and continue to spiral to the bottom as the fourth class in the country our ancestors built with their lives, and continue to be denied our justice claim. So, you know, that's why I'm recruiting people that want to work with me and work on raising money for that PAC, so that when we stay ready, we don't have to get ready. You understand? When we find those candidates that we have vetted, that we want to be the reparationists running for Congress, we will already have our PAC stacked. Okay, because politicians respond to pressure, not applause. With money in that PAC, we can change the minds of the people who are currently in office and say we can deliver this much money and this many votes. So until we get fully invested in our politics on every level of government, we're going to continue to sink into fourth-class citizenship here, and we're going to be denied our justice claim, like Dr. Claude Anderson shared at the top of the show. If you think being second class makes it tough on us to get reparations, imagine once we're fourth class citizens, how much tougher that fight is going to be. Anywho, moving on. Some critics of Black History Month, which has been celebrated since 1970, say that appreciation of Black history should occupy more space and time than just the month of February. Hence why I have decided every show we're going to highlight a freedman or freedwoman, hero or shero, over here at the Reparationist perspective. Because we do. We need to always remember how we got here. And so we'll be doing that, including actor Morgan Freeman, who called the month-long celebration ridiculous and suggested that Black history is American history during a 2005 60 Minutes interview. But Chenge's argument to include all Americans plays directly to former President Donald Trump's MAGA base, as well as the All Lives Matter response to the Black Lives Matter movement. Black history deserves special consideration in light of our country's sordid history of slavery, systemic racism, and racial injustices, as well as an opportunity to celebrate Black accomplishments. But Chenge knows exactly what he's doing, as it was reported last year that more than 87% of U.S. Republicans believe all lives matter, compared to 63% of Democrats who believe Black Lives Matter. First of all, why don't we have 100% of Democrats who believe Black Lives Matter? "87% of our electorate delivered Biden-Harris, but only 63% of the Democrats believe Black Lives Matter." If all lives matter, that would include Black lives, right? We wouldn't be the ones disproportionately executed by the race soldiers if all lives matter. But only 63% of the Democrats believe in Black Lives Matter. As you run year in and year out, every 4 years, to place them in office. And furthermore, on that note, none of the other groups' blues is like that of ADOCS. I'm not in a pissing match about it, but dollars bring you dignity and being poor makes you a target. Who would that be? According to the chart I just showed you, nationally, where there's different information out there, but we're trending around $40,000. We're trending around $40,000 in terms of our median income throughout this country that our ancestors built with their lives, right? I just shared with you, I'm going to run the numbers down, and we'll share it again a little later when I get into the educational piece. That in 2017, according to the Census Bureau, Asians' median income, $81,331 to white folks, non-Hispanic, $68,145, which is why they stormed the Capitol. They don't mind everybody else doing better than us, but they absolutely mind anybody doing better than them. And right now the Asians are doing about, I would say $15,000 greater than white households, according to this chart. The figures vary throughout, but Asians are, the numbers vary, but what is consistent is the order in which folks are doing far better than ADOCS. And all the education in the world won't close this. This is why we're demanding reparations in the trillions over multi-generations, so we can form our own business. Like when we did, when we had our Black Wall Streets. We did that from nothing. Imagine, $1 million per ADOCS, and what we could do to be independent of a government who wants to sit up here under HR 40 and give more programs with the left hand that they give away with the right. Back to the text. White non-Hispanic, $68,145. Hispanics, $50,486 is their median income. I don't understand this all races nonsense. That's at $61,372. But Black is $40,258. Because of what, family, altogether now? Institutional systemic racism makes it so. They stole everything. They have legislated nigger. Do you understand? That's what they've done to us in this country. While they sit up here and intend to open up the floodgates to about 22 million more immigrants, Biden-Harris, while we continue to suffer on the bottom in every metric. So back to the text. Lord, give me a second, family. You can see that little thing I have to go back to. Oh, here we go. Since posting his hot take on Black History Month on Monday, Chenge's post has garnered more than 700 likes and a handful of comments that support the move to abolish the nationally recognized month of education and remembrance that serves as a reminder as to all the work that is yet to be done to ensure a safe, fair, and equal future for Black Americans. ADOCS specifically. Very impressed that you said this out loud, one comment reads. Cancel Pride Week too. We are all Americans. None of us are better than the others. All these things do is keep us divided. You have my vote. Well done. Black history is American history, chimed a white man. Hallelujah. No more division, declared a white woman. Since announcing his run for Governor Whitmer's seat in October, Chenge has called the governor a dictator on numerous occasions due to her COVID-19 restrictions. Now, we got 500,000 people dead in this country alone. But she's a dictator for her COVID restrictions. While Dr. Fauci wants to open up the public schools and do herd immunity on our children. Yeah. Spoke at a Stop the Steal rally in Lansing and all but defended the actions of right-wing insurrectionists who violently stormed the Capitol last month, many of whom he said were simply overcome by passion. This is what the government is doing to us, allowing immigrant money, because it's not the African poor doing this nonsense, okay? Please understand the distinction. Many of these Nigerians and folks from Africa, they're over here and they come from money, okay? They come from money and they're infiltrating every level of office to replace ADOCS. And the government is complicit, as they are in everything we are overwrought with and challenged by in this country with 3Ks. Next up, I want to focus on the educational piece, okay? Let me cue this up, share the screen. Let me read a little bit to you guys first, okay? Because I want to set the stage for what I'm about to show you. No, I'm not going to do that. The video pretty much says what I was about to read you. So I'm going to come back over and I'm going to show this to you. And then we're going to get into the Black teacher shortage and why imperative it is, okay? Before I share the video, let me read you my copyright disclaimer, because they like to shut my stuff down if I don't do this part. I'm going to read you the Fair Use Act. Give me a second. I don't want to forget to do that. I've seen my videos removed because I used video and did not say this part. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Let's get into it. Now, what I'm about to show you is a video of how two innocent young brothers were on Southern University's campus down in Louisiana when the race soldiers, the feds, brought in the troops because the students were protesting that they did not have enough Black administrators nor Black teachers. Just to give you a point of reference. Stand by.
What's going on? They want to teach everything the white man will. We're trying to break away from this thing. See, too long we've been listening to the white people and their ways. We're developing our own ideas. We want adequate facilities, be able to put them into action. We didn't feel that we had enough professors.
Adequate classroom space.
Better funded. More input into the curriculum. And it started to build. And so we decided that the best thing to do was a very direct thing and take these matters directly to President Netterville. Met with him, and we thought that his response was not a positive one. And so we decided to boycott classes.
We will not go back to class till our demands are met. Power comes through unity.
Students at Southern University's campuses in Baton Rouge and New Orleans began a series of marches and demonstrations, demanding the resignation of the school's president and control over the administration.
For an entire month, we boycotted classes, and that had never been done.
Southern had a major football tradition. We knew that we could have some impact if we drew the attention of people who attended these games. There were demonstrators who went onto the football field and stopped a football game. That's when I was impressed. I said, this is really big. Maybe the administration will listen to them, and something great is going to happen here. When they take the attitude that they will boycott classes unless they get their way completely and instanter, then it just becomes necessary to let it be known that that just cannot happen.
Carl will go and stand on campus, stand around all day in uniform and a show of force on the parking lots and ride through the campus. We start trailing the students around to see where they were going or where they was holding meetings off campus. Everybody was on standby in a high alert situation. Nobody knew what was going to happen.
Well, of course, I was not going to sit by and allow them or anybody to destroy public property. It didn't belong to the students. It belonged to the people of the state. And while I sympathized with their complaints and was willing to address them, I was not going to allow them to destroy the university or its buildings. The student movement was indeed a non-violent movement. There was not one incident during that entire period of time that represented any violence, certainly any violence on the part of students.
At about somewhere between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, I received a knock on my door, which turned out to be the police, and they handed me a warrant for my arrest. I was scared. I'd never been in jail before. I didn't know what to expect.
On the morning of November 16th, there were no police around. It was a very serene day, campus. We did what we were doing every day, and that is that we were rallying students to leave the class. Just that this day, we informed them that these 4 students had been arrested and that we were going to go over to President Netterville's office and ask him to go downtown and get the students out of jail. He let us in his office, and he said, yes, he would indeed do that. And he said, you can stay here until I return. So we took him at his word. He left the building.
The call that the sheriff's office received And who made the call from Southern University? I don't know. But it informed us that Dr. Nettable was being held hostage. He was in the administration building that had been taken over by the students. And we was ordered to free the hostage.
So we heard this noise outside and looked out the window.
About 300 sheriff's office deputies and state police troopers assembled on campus to carry out Governor Edwards' demand that order be maintained.
We immediately knew that Netterville had betrayed us.
M16s, shotguns, sidearms, you name it, they had it.
To our amazement, there was a tank with them.
Big Bertha, as they called it, it was a big blue armored personnel carrier built out of steel. It was there in front of the administration building park.
This thing's frightening. We were about to go to war.
We had every deputy that could have a uniform on. Some of them was new, some of them was reserved, a lot of them wasn't trained. Nobody knew what was going to happen. And the state police was looking right at him, leaned down, and rolled a tear gas canister toward the crowd. There was a Bobby Crow, was a state police, state trooper. That was who rolled it up, looking right at it. One of the students leaned down and picked it up, hurled it back over the deputy. That's when hell broke loose.
Pandemonium, chaos, it was something that was quite surreal.
Big Bertha had some portholes on the side of it, and shots were coming out of there rapidly. You see it rocking from the vibration from shots being fired.
There were 2 people left on the ground. I thought that they had been knocked down by the rush of students trying to get away. But then I remember this girl turned around and started screaming.
Coming out of the administration building, what I noticed, what I'm sure a lot of other people noticed, was a pool of blood with what looked like brain matter floating around in it.
We came out by that time, the bodies was gone, but we saw the markers and the blood everywhere. And we were weeping and crying and going back to the dome. They say, you know that was your brother, huh? I said, what? I went numb.
There has been trouble at Southern University between black students and authorities for a couple of weeks, and today it ended in death.
And on the TV show now, they called his name.
20-year-old Denver Smith and Leonard Brown.
He was never a part of the movement at all. If I hadn't been involved, my brother never would have been there.
The accident would not have happened at all if they had not taken upon themselves to occupy the president's office. That was the triggering mechanism. Had they just gone about peacefully demonstrating and agitating and doing what they wanted to do and had a right to do, it never would have happened.
It came as a surprise to me after we found out later that afternoon that Dr. Nettable was not on campus during the whole period of time we were there at the administration building with the students, that he was not on campus at all.
I relived that moment because I was one of the leaders who led the students to Netterville's office, who believed that he would go down and get these students out of jail. And they trusted me. Though I didn't pull the trigger. As a leader, I may have been responsible.
They were exercising their constitutional rights. And they get killed for it. They die for it. Nobody sent their child to school to die. Just shouldn't happen. Shouldn't happen.
So you see how the government will just make stuff up. Now, I have a hard time believing that Nettles, the black president of the school, set these children up in this way. I have a very hard time believing he would have done that. I believe they concocted this story the way they've done most of the nonsense to justify their executions of us. This government is wretched in the way they get down, in the way they move. And I believe they made that up to justify going onto that campus in order to justify executing them. Like they said, all the protests were peaceful. The man was nowhere even on the campus. And you couldn't have verified that before you sent the race soldiers over there, which ultimately led to 2 of our very own ADOCS being executed. And this is why we've got to get involved, because why is this still persisting to this day? Why is government-sanctioned execution still allowed to this day? I would venture to say it's because we have not weaponized our vote nor socialized our suffering. And prior to playing Malcolm, I will share with the newcomers what that is. What do I mean when I say weaponize the vote and socialize the suffering? But I want to read to you a story about how this is still a challenge to this day. The advances that we made, given their sacrifice for education in the HBCU'S, is still going on to this day. So I'm reading from edweek.org on equity and diversity from April 14, 2020. Still mostly white and female. New federal dating on the teaching profession. Now, why is this problematic? Because what they were fighting for was access to teachers that look like them, that could empathize with them, that can show compassion, that can help them really be great in education, that can really be invested. They wanted Black administrators and Black teachers. Well, when the government has been complicit in a preschool to prison pipeline, this is when they start to get rid of all the Black teachers. And I did on an archive show, I shared with you about how the Filipinos are being welcomed into the Chicago schools, earning $52,000 a year, right? To our median income of $40,000. Where they once were earning $3,500 a year in the Philippines, they're now being conditioned and groomed to come over to this country. Chicago was that story in particular, to now earn $52,000 a year. Why are people still in office that are allowing this in Chicago? I would venture to say all over the country, this is happening from one degree or another. We must weaponize the vote and socialize our suffering, and we must build our own pack to be able to vet and get our own full-chested reparationists in office. We're not moving off the bottom until we do that. But I digress. Who is the average teacher? A 43-year-old white woman with nearly a decade and a half of teaching experience. That's according to newly updated federal data that shines a light on teachers' demographics, salaries, and their perceptions of evaluations and professional development. It also breaks down the differences between teachers in traditional public schools, charter schools, and private schools. The U.S. Department of Education collects data on schools, principals, and teachers every 2 years through its National Teacher and Principal Survey. Let me finish that last thought. When you get white teachers, you get more of our children in special educational courses, and then you get them, that's how you continue feeding the preschool to prison pipeline. When you get rid of black teachers, this is what you get. This is what you sign our children up for. Back to the text. This is a second iteration of the NTPS. An earlier version was called the Schools and Staffing Survey, which was administered every 4 years from 1987 through 2011. The survey went out to a nationally representative sample of 60,000 public school teachers and 9,600 private school teachers, as well as principals. Data collection began in September 2017 and ended in August 2018. Here are some of the notable findings from the survey released today. The average U.S. public school teacher is white, female, age 43, 14 years of experience, makes $57,900 base salary. That's base. To our national median income of $40,000. The teaching profession is largely white, but teachers in charter schools are more diverse than in traditional public schools. Number 2, the average public school teacher makes a $57,900 base salary. Nearly a fifth of teachers work second jobs. I'm going to read that a little bit. Nearly 43% of public school teachers make some extra money, $2,800 a year on average, from doing extracurricular activities in their school systems, and about 8% get some additional compensation, $1,400 on average, based on their students' performance. Traditional public school teachers make a $58,400 base salary, which is more than charter school teachers who make $50,400, or private school teachers who make $45,300. About 18% of all teachers work a second job outside of the school system, which earns them an average amount of $5,900 annually. Previous federal data has shown that most teachers are unsatisfied with their teaching salaries, which has been the target of many protest strikes and walkouts in the past couple of years. But I bet you ADOCS would prefer a $57,000 base salary over a $40,000 median income, right? Or even the $52,000 you're paying the Filipinos to come over and teach our children. English is their second language. Number 3, fewer than half of the teachers took a course in teaching English learners before their first year teaching. The survey asked teachers if they took a graduate or undergraduate course in selected subject areas before their first year in the classroom. Here are the results for public school teachers. 79% took a course in lesson planning, 77% in learning assessment, 74% in classroom management techniques, 70% in serving students with special needs, 65% in serving students from diverse economic backgrounds, 56% in using student performance data to inform instruction, 41% in teaching English language learners. Traditional public school teachers were more likely to have taken courses in these areas than their colleagues in private or charter schools. The 2 exceptions are that charter school teachers were more likely to have taken a course in serving students from diverse economic backgrounds, 65.3% compared to 64.5%, and teaching English learners, 47.5% compared to 40.5%. Traditional public school teachers also had more experience compared to charter school teachers, 14 versus 10 years. Researchers have found that many general ed teachers are not equipped with the necessary skills and knowledge to meet the needs of English learners or students with disabilities. Number 4, public school teachers had a mostly positive view of their evaluations, but less so than their peers in private schools. Number 5, almost all public school teachers participated in professional development and generally had a favorable view of the experience. Okay, so I just want to share that with you as juxtaposed against the video I just shared about how we're still fighting to be educated by our own. While you got somebody like CHENGE, a Nigerian, who wants to upend Black History Month when it's not being taught. A lot of what's happening in these schools when you're being taught by these others is that they're not reaching and connecting with the way our children learn. And they're giving them these standardized tests, making it grossly unfair for them to pass. And then, don't want affirmative action or quotas when it comes to the collegiate level. That's immigrants and white folks alike. So they just continue to put the squeeze on us in every category, while we remain in the fight of our lives to prevent from becoming the permanent underclass, right? So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I want to get in a little bit about, I want to share with you about a great story. I learned this actually from Dr. Claude Anderson. And so I'm going to share with you about this in a brief video. Let me pull it up real quick. Give me a second. And then I'll read and comment. Just give me a second, family. Okay, let me share. Stand by. Uh-oh, hold on.
Now, this whole meritorious manumission policy is in effect, moving along at the same time, this control system. About 1852, a lady named Harriet Beach Stover wanted to write about it. So she then wrote about the whole thing. She interviewed a guy whose name was Henderson, which you all know as Uncle Tom. He then told about the story. She wrote a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin. But in that book, contrary to what most people think, Uncle Tom was not the bad guy. The bad guy was Sambo. And so I'm asking you all as my brothers and sisters, please in the future, don't call a black guy who you know is worthless and trifling. Don't call him an Uncle Tom. That's complimenting him. Call him his real name, what he's entitled to, and that's a Sambo. Any black person, any black person sells his own people out and will do them in, he is a Sambo. Now, what is a Sambo again? Going back to meritorious manumission in 1710, the whole conditioning process, the whole brainwashing system, the whole social engineering system says that you must teach black people to see the world through the eyes of whites. You must see everything through their eyes. You must accept their values, their superiority, whatever they think and feel, and that way we got you contained. And that's why when you see somebody like Colin Powell running for office, they say, well, you can run for office if you see the things the way we want to see them. If you want to be conservative, you can run for office. If you want to place a lot of importance on abortion, you can run for office. If you want to talk about being anti-taxing, you can run for office, which means if you see things the way we see them as a black person, you're safe. You're acceptable. And if you don't want to do that way, then become an athlete or an entertainer. So therefore, you identify the rest of those blacks in the country. You stay away from them. They're bad. and you start going around and you try to go get a penny out of an athlete and entertain, do something for the black community. They're gonna do it. Their advisors won't let them do it. The agents won't do it. The promotion people won't let them do it. They're gonna identify with your community because again, they have now already died and gone to heaven. Okay, so when Harriet Beecher Stowe put out her book, what she tried to tell black folk is that Uncle Tom was not a bad guy. See, Uncle Tom, you read that book, and most blacks, 90% of blacks never read it. They always call another black, he's an Uncle Tom, he's an Uncle Tom. He's not an Uncle Tom. If you read the book Uncle Tom was a guy who would not beat black women. Uncle Tom in that book was a guy who would not beat other blacks to make them pick more cotton. Uncle Tom was a guy who would come in at night and take cotton out of his own bag and put it in other black folks' bags so they wouldn't get whippings at night. Uncle Tom was a guy who would not tell where black folk were hiding when they went across the river and they broke free as slaves. But Simon Legree, the white slave master, had a black that followed him around named Sambo, who always says, you show me, give me the right, I'll show you how to trees the coons. I'll show you where they hides. And see, and that's the guy. See, his role responsibility is going back to meritorious manumission. I told you about when you got to protect white folks' property and protect their wealth. He says, I will protect it and find it for you. And that's why you read in those end of the movies and books that came out after Uncle Tom, you always had a black guy, a black slave was running down the road saying, Master, master, here comes the army. Let's hide our silver and gold. And you all say, our? How did it get to be our? You know, he always want to say something that doesn't even belong to him. And that showed up all through history. And today you got the same kind of personality doing it. And now he's not saying let's hide our silver and gold. He's called himself a conservative. I'm also against affirmative action for black folk. I'm against quotas. I'm against preferential treatment. Even had one running around talking about he want to pass a law to stop black folk from discriminating against whites. You still got that kind of personality that always wants to protect something, protect the strong. You always got that kind of Sambo personality. And nowadays, the best way to get rich is to say, I'm gonna protect that master's gold and silver, and I'm gonna be against them black folk. I guarantee I can get you a radio talk show. I can get you a television show. I can even get you an appointment to the Supreme Court. Okay? You tell me how many black folk you want to sell out, and I guarantee I'll show you how to make money. Because you see, every ethnic group, every religious group, every racial group, every political group has always made money off of black folk. Okay? And what I'm going to start talking about in Powernomics when I come back here in the fall is to show you all one thing. I'm going to tell you time is up. You have made, as a race, you made every religion, every ethnic group, every racial group rich. There is nobody else left on earth to make rich but yourselves.
All right, family. So let me dig into this article now. I'm going to show a video of Reverend Henson as one of my featured freedmen, more than likely on Friday. But I do want to read you just a little bit of this article because his history is just richer than this article purports and than what you just heard Dr. Claude Anderson speak on. But before I begin to read, let me talk about what Dr. Anderson shared. We're dealing with so many Sambos in the government. That was exhibited and displayed by the circus of an HR 40 hearing for the second time, where you've got people on both sides of the aisle actually talking about a cashless reparations package and study for American descendants of chattel slavery. Right? Sorry, guys, I have to turn my little fan on. Yeah, they want to sit up here and pander for your vote. That includes Biden. He wants to sit up here and now pretend to be for the HR 40. He could have put that to an executive order if he was really about that, right? Not that we want it to pass. We've got edits. You need to visit fixhr40.com to help us in this fight to get those edits through and to get Dr. William Sandy Darity on that commission. We need to get folks in there that know the numbers and know what they're talking about, because it was clear at that HR 40 hearing that the Democrats had no defenses for the Republicans that spoke up, right? Arthur Ward and I did a show about it, so I'm not going to revisit all those talking points. But Dr. Claude Anderson, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., they've all told us what it is when it comes to these elected officials. When it comes to the Sambos that like to sell us out for a bucket of chicken. Hello, Clyburn, Sheila Jackson Lee. And once again, shameless plug. I'm driving it strong, the Equity Advocates PAC. Until we have money in that arsenal to vet the candidates, to get them elected, we're going to continue to be on the bottom, and we're going to get a reparations with very little to no money when we're owed, like I said at the top of the show, on the low end, 104 trillion and 735 billion recurring. Doesn't include the war on drugs, the modern day pandemic, the government sanctioned executions, the theft of our intellectual property. It doesn't include the cost of living increases, the cost of all the black lies, the cost of what happened with our HBCU'S. It doesn't include a lot. So those numbers will be calculated, and that's the number we're going to be working from. But none of that happens until we replace the lanes, because we need Congress to do this. Why? Getting a president to give an executive order when he can't really attach any money to it is futile. There'll be another Trump to come through and just overturn an executive order. We need this from Congress. And Congress constituents don't need to be in agreement about that. They don't. Now, they can continue to watch the events unfold and learn why we're owed the money. It's a debt. It's not a handout. It's not welfare. But we owe them no explanation. The government knows exactly what it did and who it did it to and what it continues to do. So I'm just saying, to Claude Anderson's point, if we're looking for these people that are currently in office to get this done for us, we are looking in vain, because they literally are sitting up here talking about no cash. When institutional systemic racism and the complicity of the federal government is how we got tethered to the bottom. Back to the text. Uncle Tom, I'm reading from urbanintellectuals.com. Uncle Tom man refused to beat black women. Now, I had one of my followers in Facebook say, but he beat black men. Well, to me, his pros outweigh his cons. Let me read it. We need to question the things we take as fact. This is an ongoing process. Let me help you with something. I learned long ago, if white folk be for it, we need to be against it. If white folk be against it, we need to be for it. That's how we need to move henceforth. Today on our Raising Proud Black Children Facebook group, a member shared something that is important for us all to know. It concerned Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom was originally a character from Harriet Beecher Stowe's 1852 novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, how many of us, me included, read this? Or how many of us did not read it because Uncle Tom was pushed onto us as the real sellout? Say ouch, somebody. As Wikipedia outlines, Stowe's melodramatic story humanized the suffering of slavery for white audiences by portraying Tom as a Jesus-like figure who is ultimately martyred, beaten to death by a cruel master because he refuses to betray the whereabouts of two women who had escaped from slavery. And also interesting is the man that Uncle Tom is believed to be largely based on, Josiah Henson, Reverend Josiah Henson. As the post says, did you know most Black folks have heard or used the term Uncle Tom when we refer to a sellout or someone we feel is tap dancing for the attention and acceptance of other races. For example, a Coon Clyburn, a Coon Herschel Walker, a Coon Larry Elder, a Coon Burgess Owens, right? We would normally refer to them as Uncle Tom because that's what we've been conditioned to believe about Uncle Tom, when it's in fact they're Sambos. So all of you over here getting this education, I want you to share and make this go viral and get all the Black folks conditioned to call these Mickey Fickies Sambos, not Uncle Tom. It has always been used in a derogatory manner to infer that this was a type of person who cozied up to a slave master. But did you know that the inference and analogy is totally wrong? Uncle Tom was a man who refused to beat Black women. He refused to tell on the other slaves. He was a man who would put cotton in other slaves' bags at night so they wouldn't get beat. He helped 100 slaves get free long before the Underground Railroad. Uncle Tom was a man that, once free, established the first laborers' school for other fugitive slaves. His name is Josiah Henson. Josiah Henson was an author, abolitionist, and minister. Born into slavery in Port Tobacco, Charles County, Maryland, he escaped to Upper Canada in 1830 and founded a settlement and laborers' school for other fugitive slaves at Dawn, near Dresden in Kent County, Upper Canada of British Canada. So stop calling these sellouts Uncle Tom. That's a compliment. It's Sambo that was a sellout who would do anything for his slave master's approval. It was Sambo who would snitch on his people just to get an attaboy from his handler. Uncle Tom is a man to be respected, not associated with the Sambo dog. And FYI, and this is where I disagree, but I'll share, it was other Blacks who turned his name into a negative connotation. Lies. White folks co-opted the Uncle Tom cabin narrative to flip it, to condition Black folks to view Uncle Tom as a negative connotation. We didn't just come up with this on our own. That was their white author. They co-opted the narrative to make an Uncle Tom of Josiah Henson, and us buying into their BS and their black faces, the blackface little coon shows they would do in blackface. They co-opted Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin and did, these type of circus shows in blackface to paint Uncle Tom as to be a sellout versus the hero he actually was to us as ADOCS. That's white folks doing. And Black folks, instead of picking up the book and reading it to find it out for themselves, not all, some read it. I didn't read it, admittedly, but I'm going to, now that I know all of this history so rich about Josiah Henson. Black folks just took the narrative and ran with it. New Age Blacks of the time felt his image was too passive and not militant enough, and so they started using it in a negative way and declaring Uncle Tom is dead. Okay, so that's a whole nother purview. I'm dealing with the Uncle Tom making a mockery of him being a bootlick for the white man's doing, the master's bidding. At the same time, Blacks were saying he wasn't militant enough. Whites were in fear of him because his good nature stood as a mirror to their evil, demonic ways and shed light on the horrible treatment of slaves. They started banning the plays and books about Uncle Tom's Cabin all over the South because of how powerful his image was. Shame on us for destroying a just and upright man for the sake of some cause that could have been advanced without degrading this brother. Shame on us. Okay. Also, as one commentator pointed out, Actually, there's more to the story. The character of Uncle Tom, as characterized by Harriet Beecher Stowe, was a ripoff of Josiah Henson's autobiography, which he wrote after leaving the U.S. for Canada. He twice tried to buy his own freedom, only to have the white oppressor keep increasing the price. Ultimately, he escaped with his family to Canada, where he became an activist. In her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe recharacterized his original story of aggressive resistance to one of passivity. This was one of the first major novels that played on the trope of the all-forgiving, non-threatening, sweet Jesus acting Negro, one that was much more palatable to white readers. In the novel, the women were the ones actively fighting for their freedom, not the primary male character. While kissing the asses of his masters, his most positive act was his refusal to whip the black women who were plotting their escape. The reason James Baldwin and others rejected this depiction of black men was that it reinforced an ideology that black men should accept oppression without fighting back, a standard white men were never held to. That's the rest of the story of how that term gained its derogatory connotation. Here's a quote. I'm going to do that part later. Well, it's short. Here's a quote from the 19th century black publication, The Liberator. Uncle Tom's character is sketched with great power and rare religious perception. It triumphantly exemplifies the nature, tendency, and results of Christian non-resistance. We are curious to know whether Miss Stowe is a believer in the duty of non-resistance for the white man under all possible outrage and peril as for the black man. For whites in parallel circumstances, it is often said, talk not of overcoming evil with good. It is madness. Talk not of peacefully submitting to change and strikes. It is base civility. Talk not of servants being obedient to their masters. Let the blood of tyrants flow. How is this to be explained or reconciled? Is there one law of submission and non-resistance for the black man and another of rebellion and conflict for the white man? When it is the whites who are trodden in the dust, does Christ justify them in taking up arms to vindicate their rights? And when it is the blacks who are thus treated, does Christ require them to be patient, harmless, long-suffering, and forgiving? Are there two Christs? James Weldon Johnson, a prominent figure of the Harlem Renaissance, expresses an antipathetic opinion in his autobiography. For my part, I was never an admirer of Uncle Tom, nor of his type of goodness, but I believe that there were lots of old Negroes as foolishly good as he. So next time you hear the word being used, why not impart this knowledge? So in effect, what they're saying is Harriet Beecher Stowe adapted Josiah Henson's story. The video I'm going to share on Friday speaks a little differently. I guess somewhere in the middle is the truth. But in effect, she co-opted his story and made him mild-mannered. But he was, in fact, an overseer. Okay? So I'll share that video on Friday, and we'll get into that and talk more about it. We're at 5:17, and I want to get to your comments and then close us out with Malcolm X, okay? Actually, let me do that while I'm over here. I want to read this story about Malcolm X. Then we'll get into your comments, and I'll close it out with a 5-minute video of Malcolm, okay? Just a second. Let's see here. Okay, I don't need that tape anymore. Just 1 second, family. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to the live. I'll be over to give y'all some love momentarily, okay? Hold on. History. I had just a short video I wanted to play out of Malcolm. You guys, if you haven't watched it already, please watch parts 1 and 2 of the Black church, it was extraordinary on so many levels for them to drill into basically how we got here, like to this place where we're defecting from the church because it's out of touch with what's happening to Black life on the ground. So you guys definitely want to check that out for sure. Parts 1 and parts 2, okay? I'm just looking for the video so I can have it queued up when you guys when I close the show after I pray you out. Okay, we're almost done. So many stories, so little time. Oh Lord. Let's go back. It's not, for some reason, it's not queued up. Okay. Okay, now, thank you for your patience. Here we have an article dated the 20th, okay, yesterday, where attorney Ben Crump and daughters of Malcolm X reveal NYPD officer's deathbed confession of NYPD FBI conspiracy. Former NYPD officer Ray Wood was tasked with ensuring that Malcolm X's security detail was arrested days prior to the assassination, guaranteeing Malcolm X didn't have door security while at the Audubon ballroom where he was killed on today in 1965, February 21st, says attorney Benjamin Crump during a press conference at the former old Audubon, the site where Malcolm X was assassinated. The venue has since been renamed the Shabazz Center. Okay. Almost 56, no, today it makes 56 years to the date, which is why he is our Freedman hero story of today's show. Assassination of Malcolm X, the slain leader's daughters, and a noted civil rights attorney are shining a light on those whom they believe are responsible for the heartless murder. The group gathered on yesterday, at the old Audubon Ballroom, now renamed Shabazz Center, with lawyers Ray Hamlin and Paul Napoli and Reggie Wood, whose relative NYPD officer Ray Wood allegedly confessed in a deathbed declaration letter. The gathering occurred in the same venue as the assassination and just one day before the heinous crime's anniversary. The new allegations focus on Officer Wood and a conspiracy against organized civil rights groups that he said had been perpetrated by the New York City Police Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Reggie Wood alleges that authorities conspired to assassinate Malcolm X in Harlem. Of course they did. Ray Wood, an undercover police officer at the time, confessed in a deathbed declaration letter that the NYPD and the FBI conspired to undermine the legitimacy of the civil rights movement and its leaders, Crump stated. Without any training, Wood's job was to infiltrate civil rights organizations and encourage leaders and members to commit felonious acts, Crump noted in a news release before the gathering. He was also tasked with ensuring that Malcolm X's security detail was arrested days prior to the assassination, guaranteeing Malcolm X didn't have door security while at the Audubon Ballroom where he was killed on February 21st, 1965. Wood's purported deathbed letter was delivered to three of Malcolm's daughters, Kabila, Ilyasa, and Gamila. Reggie Wood, the administrator of Ray Wood's estate, read the letter to Malcolm's daughters. Oh, those poor girls. Whew, to Jesus, the horror that you constantly have to relive this every anniversary. Ray Wood served as an undercover New York City police officer with the Bureau of Special Services and Investigations, or BOSSI for short. Reportedly, he earned a reputation for infiltrating the Bronx Congress of Racial Equality Core chapter under the name Ray Woodall in 1964. According to a report in The Guardian, Wood posed a 27-year-old graduate of Manhattan College studying law at Fordham University. He was soon named Core's housing chairman and oversaw a voter registration project, The Guardian reported. Wood earned his activist bona fides by getting arrested with two others at City Hall while attempting a citizen's arrest of Mayor Wagner for allowing racial discrimination on a public construction project, the UK-based newspaper published. By 1965, Wood had been reassigned to infiltrate a group calling itself the Black Liberation Movement, BLM, Black Lives Matter, and received credit for diffusing a plot to bomb the Statue of Liberty. 3 men were convicted of Malcolm X's 65 murder. Talmadge Hayer, who later changed his name to Mujahid Abdul Halim, was the only one to admit guilt in the assassination. Norman Butler, who later changed his name to Muhammad Abdul Aziz, and Thomas Johnson, later named Khalil Islam, maintained their innocence. Aziz won parole in 85, Islam was released in 87, and Halim was released in 2010. Islam died in 2009. You guys should watch this one too. A Netflix documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X? Powerful. Was released last year and featured interviews conducted by Abdur Rahman Muhammad, an activist and investigator who said he dedicated his life to solving Malcolm's murder. Following the documentary's release, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office announced it would review the case and reopen it if they found new evidence. Manhattan DA Cy Vance Jr. could not immediately be reached for comment. Well, it is my solemn prayer that they sue the pants off the city, that they will own the city by the time they're done suing them. That's what I hope. Because we know they're going to sit up here and say there's no reason to reopen the case. Well, I say take the information you've got, file a civil suit, and own the city. I pray that they're able to do that. Now, let's get to your comments. You've been so patient. I thank you so much. Let's see, what time am I at? 5:26. Okay. I'm going to read about, let's see here, 20 minutes and then play the audio. I'm going to pray us out. I'm going to talk about weaponization of our vote, socializing our suffering for the newcomers. And then I'm going to play the Malcolm X, pray us out, and then play the Malcolm X video so I can be on my 6 o'clock advocacy call, okay? So I'm only reading the pertinent comments. Hello, looking great. Oh, thank you, my love. Rip Malcolm. Yes, today his anniversary, fam. Okay. Brian says, that's the only way these Negroes get a place in these conservative white spaces. They regurgitate their talking points. You're absolutely right, Brian. But that would go, like I said, this is happening on both sides of the aisle. This kind of sellout is happening on both sides of the aisle, which is why we need to vet our own candidates, have our own pack, and be able to take the government over in as much as we can, you know, like at least set the stage for our children to have a better government that works on their behalf versus the sellouts we currently have in place. Moni Love, good to see you. Nicole says, Michigan needs to let him know that they'll vote him out of office if he don't get it right. This is why we need to drop Democrats. Well, absolutely. I mean, this CHENGE is who she's referring to, family, if you're just now joining the live. CHENGE is a Nigerian who's running for office in Michigan on the Republican ticket and he tells the white folks there for their vote that he will upend Black History Month and make it all American History Month. He sounds to me a lot like Ward Connerly out here, who did away with affirmative action, which is why our numbers are hardest hit. I think the last show I shared, we're about 3.7% of the UC Berkeley enrollment from 2019. But that happened at the hands of an ADOCS, Ward Connerly, who, spoke out against affirmative action. Why? Because it's financially beneficial for these folks to sell us out in this way. So CHENGE is just following suit of our white oppressors in seeking to upend Black History Month while implementing American History Month. This this all lives matter nonsense that continues to permeate the ethers that we must shut down in our advocacy exclusively for our very own people. So, to my understanding, that Rust Belt is really red. Like, it's hard for the Dems to win anymore because, that's where a lot of the white folks are heavily concentrated and they're voting Republican. They're so pissed with the Democrats. So they both suck. Okay. So we need a confer. We need to be able to buy our politicians and to pay for our politics. That's how everybody else is getting it done. Brian says, we get the whitewashed version of our history, slavery, which is now being taught as having been a plantation system. Civil rights is taught as we integrated, so racism is all over. Brian, you are so on fire with your comments. You're absolutely right. Which is why we've got to constantly be in their faces about the history and what they've done to us. Because they've written it out of the history books. They aren't educating our children. Even though our tax dollars are paying for public school education. Our history is nowhere to be found. Never has been. So it is on us to weaponize the vote and make sure we are seen and heard, because they're seeking to extinct us and replace us with immigrants and give our reparations to all lives matter. To everybody gets a piece of whatever they're giving. And we know that generally means nothing for ADOCS. You must lean in. York 2700, welcome to the live. Thank you. Okay, moving down. If this campaign is built merely upon eliminating Black History Month, you can tell he has no real political platform. You're absolutely right. Yet again, Brian. No, he has no political platform. But whenever you come against ADOCS, that's all the platform you need in a country like ours with 3 Ks. It is what it is. If you are doing anything to harm or set ADOCS back, you get the vote. Even our own people vote against our interests. 87% of our electorate voted for the author of the 94 crime bill, Jim Crow, a segregationist Jim Crow, Sloppy Joe, and Skamala the Chameleon. By her own admission, she's Cali's top cop. So sadly, people don't have a conscience that way. Mike Michelson, welcome to the live. Thank you for joining. Brian says, white supremacy uses any excuse to police us excessively. Thank you for the reference to the HBCU clip. Absolutely, family. They use any excuse. And so given that we're a wealthless group, the only commodity we've got is our vote. And I'll tell you shortly how to weaponize it before I pray us out. Trey X ADOS, welcome to the live. I love my wife, 0007. Welcome. I'm doing quite well in Cali. It's so beautiful out here as I hear of the horror show in the weather every place else. California is just sunshine and blue skies and like about 65, 70 degrees. We're so blessed. This is why they want us out of here. I mean, we've gone from 16 to 5%. It's tragic. Folks are leaving in droves. Us. Anywho, it's sad. Gibson Eugene, thank you for joining the live. Mike Michelson says, Dr. Anderson inspired me to finally read Uncle Tom's Cabin so I could be informed myself. Thank you for that, Mike Michelson. Family, check YouTube. If you don't want to invest in the book, they may have an audio I know that Josiah Henson's story is on audio with his own voice. I haven't found it yet, but I intend to search for it. And once I do, I'll share it as part of the links. I'll share it as part of the links when I feature the video that I want to share with you next Friday, featuring him as our Freedman hero for the day. Okay, like I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, I'm doing Freedmen's history all year. Every show that I do will impart celebration of one of our very own who is just a huge credit to why we even have life today. I'm not dealing with just a month of it. Every show I'm highlighting one of them. Okay. It'll be short. It won't be anything to like do no big old long drawn out video, but I'll do like I'm doing with Malcolm. I read a little bit about what's happening currently, and then I'm going to show you a little 5-minute video clip at the end. So it's going to be rich, but we must do it. And you may find the audiobook of Uncle Tom. I'm going to look for that. York 2700 says $15 an hour is not going to pull me out of poverty. I want mine. Absolutely. $15 an hour may have worked 30 years ago. Who's that helping in today's cost of living? The median household cost throughout the country. Let's look it up real quick, family, since we got that going. What's the median home price nationally? Okay. What is the average home price in the U.S.? $320,000 is the median U.S. home price. Who can afford a home on $15 an hour when the median home price is $320,000? Who can afford it on a $40,000 median income for Black folks? That's the national median according to the Census Bureau 2017. It's worse now. And during the pandemic, it's gotten worse. I'm just saying. Okay. Oh, God. All right. So thank you for sharing that. You're right, York 2700. We all need to be in the fight for this reparations. Miss Lady K Love says Dr. Claude Anderson opened her eyes to the Uncle Tom scam as well. The Dr. Claude Anderson opened her eyes. The audio used to be free on YouTube. Wow. Okay. So it is on YouTube. Okay. Brian says Uncle Tom's Cabin is an excellent book. Miss Lady K Love says I got cussed out because I told the truth about Uncle Tom. Okay. That's okay. Do you know how many folks cuss me out on a regular? They call me everything but a child of God. Who cares? Keep teaching, sis. Keep spreading the truth. She said she got cussed out by a Black man. Well, you know, some folks love to stay ignorant. That's not your monkey, not your circus. You keep showing up being the truth, my love. Get Shannon McFall on to tell us about Michigan. Wouldn't that be awesome? I'm sure he could go hard in the paint. That's an idea. I've not had him on as a guest of the show yet. Brian says you can get it free on Kindle. I think it's in the public domain over there. Wonderful. Miss Lady K Love says she loves her some Dr. Claude Anderson. Awesome, family. So with that said, those are the comments, and I thank you guys for being my co-hosts. I thank you those who have yet to chat. I want to explain weaponizing our vote before I pray us out. What I am suggesting is nothing unakin to what Dr. Charles Morris of Abyssinian Church recommended. When we delivered Teddy Roosevelt the vote, and then he turned around and dishonorably discharged 167 Buffalo soldiers who were falsely accused of murdering a second white man after being quarantined to their barracks for being wrongfully accused of murdering the first. He said, "You shot us when our guns were empty." And for that, we're going to return the same by giving a blue top of the ticket and a red Congress to protect the Black South. Now, that is when we were Republicans. I'm asking for us to weaponize the vote by doing the reverse. I'm asking us to do the reverse. A trifecta of either party is the death knell for ADOCS, as you are now seeing, as we are a month into Biden-Harris White House, the Biden-Harris office, their administration, and the only thing I've seen that they may do is Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill that was used to trade her and our ancestors into slavery. 87% of our electors showed up for this. We get a scam of an HR 40 hearing, which is pandering for the votes for 2022 and 2024. And I'm suggesting we do the same. Deliver a red top of the ticket and a blue Congress to protect the over 53% or higher since COVID of ADOCS who rely on government assistance by design of institutional systemic racism until this government cuts the checks in the trillions over multi-generations. It'll gridlock it. They won't get much done with those. Well, they're pretty much all Republican, and they all protect the oligarchs. But I'm saying that not much will get accomplished if we deliver a blue Congress and a red top of the ticket, while we work on building the Equity Advocates PAC in order to get our reparationists, our full-chested reparationists, to replace the lames, or so that we can buy the lames and get them on reparations hard to get it done, not just a study. Reparations doesn't need any more study. It needs to get done. So I forgot to find my banner, so I'm going to do that as I play us out, okay? As I pray us out and then play Malcolm X's video. If you'd like to patronize the show, you could do so at Cash App $. Oh, thank you to those of you who, oh my God, I did want to announce the people that gave donations last time. I didn't see it till after the show because I usually put the phone on silent. Oh my God, I can't. Brian, was that you? I think Brian Johnson was one. Just give me a second, family. I like to thank the donors while I'm live. Just give me, I'm sorry. Should have had that queued up. Oh God. Oh, Sugarfoot. Okay. Debonair 1. Byron, that's who that was that sent a Cash App. The next person, Brian Johnson. Yes, my love. Thank you so much for the Cash App. Nita Scott, thank you for the Cash App. Okay. Denise Jarrett, thank you for the Cash App. Robin Freelix, Treyax, I thank you guys. I thank Astrid. I thank Deborah Burrows. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. For those of you who have given, because it's going to take too long to scroll through all that, and some of them are through PayPal. But I want to thank you so much. Your contributions to the show enable me to keep educating the masses and advocating for reparations. So I appreciate you more than I have the words to convey. Thank you so much for that. And it's scrolling. If you'd like to give, $FOADOS TV at Cash App. And then the PayPal me link is in that scroll bar as well. With that being said, family, I want to pray us out. And then I'm going to play the video of Malcolm to conclude the show. I want to remind you, family, that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOCS and his allies are, God truly is, because, family, you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. Until Friday, family, for another fire show, you go out in this world and you show them exactly who you are. And you make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your work week. Know that if no one's told you today that I love you, Black family, and I love you so strong. Mwah. Stand by for Malcolm X. Thank you, Malcolm.
Crusader, Black nationalist. Malcolm X was a civil rights crusader, Black nationalist, and Muslim minister. He was born Malcolm Little on May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. Malcolm's father was a Baptist preacher and outspoken supporter of Black activist Marcus Garvey. As a result, the Littles were frequently terrorized by white supremacist groups. Despite his family's attempts to evade harassment, young Malcolm felt the trauma of racist violence firsthand when his father was killed under mysterious circumstances. A brilliant student, Malcolm was discouraged and demeaned by white teachers, who ultimately pushed him to drop out of school at age 15. Bouncing between Boston, Flint, and Harlem during his teenage years, Malcolm turned to crime to get by. In 1946, at age 21, he was arrested for burglary and sentenced with 8 to 10 years in prison. While incarcerated, Malcolm developed a new and radical worldview based in liberation and self-determination. Through the influence of fellow prisoner John Bembry, Malcolm became an insatiable reader. He soon found himself drawn to the teachings of the Nation of Islam, a pro-Black religious group led by Elijah Muhammad. Accepting his new faith, Malcolm severed ties to the past, changing his last name to X as a representation of his lost African surname. After his release on parole in 1952, he worked to develop the nation's ministry and expand its membership. In 1958, Malcolm married fellow NOI devotee Betty Shabazz, with whom he would have 6 children. Malcolm's rapid rise in the organization mirrored the electrifying appeal of his teachings among African Americans. The wider public caught a glimpse of his movement's power one night in 1957, when Malcolm organized hundreds of Black Muslims in Harlem to ensure the safety of Hinton Johnson, a hospitalized victim of police violence. Malcolm's vision of Black nationalism, which did not rule out violence as a means of overcoming white oppression, was met with fear and skepticism from mainstream white audiences, and quickly attracted the attention of the FBI. Still, Malcolm's role as a powerful voice in the civil rights struggle continued to build momentum. By the early 60s, however, Malcolm had grown disillusioned with the Nation of Islam after learning of Elijah Muhammad's extramarital affairs. In 1963, Malcolm publicly cut ties with the organization. Shortly thereafter, he traveled to Mecca and Cairo on a cultural journey that reaffirmed his faith and cultivated his hope for a peaceful resolution to the struggle for racial equality. Still, Malcolm X's return home was not easy. Death threats, many from followers of Elijah Muhammad, plagued him and his family. Eager to make a lasting statement, Malcolm X collaborated with writer Alex Haley on an autobiography. Sadly, he would never see the book's success. On February 21st, 1965, before a speech in Manhattan's Audubon Ballroom, Malcolm X was shot to death by 3 members of the Nation of Islam. While Malcolm's journey was cut tragically short, his words and spirit continue to shed light on the nature of inequality and the path to peace. He remains one of the most influential figures in American history.
Presenting Home Chef Oven Ready